Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
finally,
Okay, here
thank
we
you
go.
very much. Thank you very much. Finally, we did it. So before we start, for your information, so as I said, my name is Jagadeshwar Reddy and I'm a DBA researcher. I'm in my final year of my research. So to complete my research, I'm conducting this interview to know about the upcycling and sustainability in fashion. So your answers will be cited in my dissertation, and this recording might be used in wherever it requires. So could you please let me know if you are okay with it?
I'm fine with that. Thank you, Reddy.
Thank you very much. So before we start, I just want to know a little brief about you and your background.
Yeah. So, Reddy, my name's Angelina Russo. I live in South Australia. I run a knitwear brand called Fleurieu Made, and Fleurieu Made is established on the Fleurieu Peninsula, which is a peninsula just south of Adelaide, about 80 kilometres south of Adelaide. We're surrounded by sheep and alpaca, and we're on the coast. And I started the brand about 2022 when we moved down there, and I use at the moment only vintage yarns for the knitwear that I make, all on domestic 1980s domestic knitting machine.
Mm. So that was I was wondering because you did your PhD in design and architecture and now you have
Yeah.
started this sustainable vintage knitwear brand. So what influenced you for this change? Because PhD is not an easy job. You have invested a lot of time and energy and now you are doing something different for that. So
Good call.
what is the reason for
So,
your change?
yeah, I was a full-time academic for about 22 years, and
Mhm.
during that time I did my PhD in architecture and design, and I worked predominantly with cultural institutions during that time. And but throughout that time, I always wanted to do textiles. It just wasn't the right time for it. And then in about 2012, I did actually start my previous 2011 started a small brand called Culture Cycle, and I actually did win a couple of national design awards for that brand. But
Mhm.
I got to a point where I had to scale, and I was ready to leave academia altogether and just do that. But it was very, very difficult to scale, and it was difficult to scale using a kind of fast fashion model. And so I left it for a while after 2017 and came back to it in 2022 and thought, if I'm going to do it this time, I have to do it with a different model and really be very specific about how to do it. And in the meantime, I had left full-time academia, so it became a much more available to me to be able to pursue this in this way. Uh, so that's where I am now.
Mhm. So you are into sustainable knitwear and I'm into sustainable denim. So how do you see the growing demand of sustainable consumer demand, for example, particularly in the denim, like consumers are ready to pay a little more for the sustainable product. So how do you see this change and particularly from the aspect of sustainable fashion in general?
I think that it's there are a couple of things there that people are seeking to be more sustainable. And at the same time, there's a lot of pressure on people when, as consumers, we want to be sustainable. There's a lot of pressure on us to actually do the right thing. And a lot of the pressure falls on us as consumers, whereas it would seem that there are a lot of suppliers and manufacturers who are not being as sustainable. And while there's a lot of regulation coming in, there are still enormous problems with the fast fashion model, enormous problems of pollution around the world. And so I think that it's important for us to think about how to tell the story of sustainability so that it captures people's curiosity and it stays and it remains a kind of a joyous activity instead of kind of hitting people over the head and saying you have to be more sustainable or you can't do this, you can't do that. Yeah.
hmm So, yes, that's a challenge, and one more challenge is scalability, as you said that sustainable business model when it comes to vintage yarns or
Yeah.
upcycling, we are facing the pricing issue and the scaling issue. So, what are your recommendations in terms of scalability? Where do you think sustainable designers or brands have to improve in order to increase their scalability?
I think that it is about looking at different business models. I think that we try to create small brands. We try and create collections and then have them available quickly, and we want them in all the different colors and in all the different sizes, and it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. I was speaking with a young woman yesterday who has had a handbag business for 10 years, and she was saying that they had brought in a model where people could resell their existing bags. You get sometimes you get bored of having the same thing. There's nothing wrong with it, but you want the next one, but you don't want to throw away the one that you've got. And so their business model had changed to offer the top of the range new products that are all made locally, but also to accept and refurbish existing products and then make those available as pre-loved products. And I thought that was a really interesting, for a small brand, a really interesting way of owning the repurposing, particularly when you are already manufacturing. I think one of the issues that we have uh, around using that fast fashion model is that one of the issues is that the quantities. It's very, very difficult to be able to scale if you have to buy so many products when you have to order so many products in order to actually have them available. And then that leads to so much waste in its own right, so much dead stock fabric, so much unsold stock. The cost of going back and forth in manufacturing, and between the trial, between the sampling and the final products, there are so many pitfalls in that model for anyone who isn't a major, large brand, that I just don't think we can, not even looking at it just through sustainability, but just as a business model itself, it doesn't make sense for us. It doesn't make sense for us to do it that way. So how can we do it? Whether that's about repurposing and repair and recycling internally, or whether we are able to redesign uh, or accept or offer rental or whatever it is. There are lots of different little models that are developing quite into robust, sophisticated systems now that we can plug into our existing business models in order to be both sustainable and to be able to scale as the smaller brands.
hmm Yeah. So, since you are talking about the discarding of unsold products, and the interesting thing is, in your recent events, you talked at the Berlin Fashion Week about the policy changes to ban the disposal or of unsold products. So this is happening very much because the retailers are ordering more than what they could sell, and they are disposing the unsold products. So this is interesting thing. Yes, policymakers have to look into it. Apart from that, what policy changes you demand in order to encourage models like upcycling and thrifting to be a
Mm.
new normal? What policies
Yeah,
do you want to see in the society?
I do think that. So just to confirm, I didn't speak at Berlin Fashion Week. I attended, and then I wrote a series of blogs around it. But I
Oh,
think
sorry.
that that's okay. But what came out of that for me was that the policy changes that, so the digital passport is one of them. So that's about transparency of where products themselves are coming from. But the making it illegal to dump excess stock, which comes in next year, that's a
Mhm.
really big policy change, as is the policy change in France, where the addition of €5 per item of fast fashion, for big manufacturers that are selling €3 €3 t-shirts, that doubles the cost of the t-shirt straight away. It should never have been €3 to begin with. So I think there are we have also the right to repair within electrical goods, but I think that importantly, thinking about, and maybe that's not a policy thing, but in as far as the design aspects where repair can become part of the process, as well as repurposing and recycling. There are so many systems that are kind of converging right at this moment. I'd like to see policy that recognizes the importance of those converging systems and offers ways of supporting them. So, for instance, if we were looking, seriously at local manufacturing or smart manufacturing in Australia, then we need policy that supports it. We need to have procurement at scale to make it viable for local manufacturing or for the purchase and then the training for smart factories. It's not good enough to just say we want to bring manufacturing back to Australia. That's never going to work unless we have policy that says if you're creating if you've got uniforms for the police force or for the defence force, a certain percentage of them must be made in Australia, must be locally manufactured or whatever those things are. And unless we've got those kinds of policies that assure a baseline of procurement, without that, we can't have the infrastructure that we require to be able to build new skills. So they're the kinds of policies that I think would be important.
But do you think like countries like Australia, if they want to impose, if there is like a new policy making that, at least 60 to 70% of your products should be locally made, do they have the infrastructure ready? And because the production speed and production costs are unmatchable in when it compares to the countries like China, Bangladesh, India, Vietnam, because they are cheaper, they are faster, they are advanced. So how do you think this would work if there is a policy of making like a certain percentage of your product should be locally made?
I think that's where you start with government procurement. And I think that's where you have a long, 15, 20-year plan that says this isn't just about starting with 5% Australian made. It's about how we support the upskilling
Mhm.
of people in Australia in order to produce this. And when we're talking about smart manufacturing, we're talking about digital sampling, we're looking at where and how we actually train people to undertake recycling or repurposing of products, repairing of products, that those kinds of skills we did used to have in Australia. We had enormous workforce,
Yeah.
skilled workforce in the textile space, and we did away with it. And we did away with it for fast fashion. We did away with it for a lot of reasons, but at the same time that we did away with it, fast fashion came up. So it would take time, but we have to have some kind of policy driver that assures us that we can undertake certain aspects, not all of it, obviously, but certain aspects of those processes where we can upskill, where we can build the infrastructure and be very specific, I think very specific about it, rather than saying we're going to build the whole thing. Let's look at where and how specific skills in Australia can be utilized around the world. So for instance, for us, we grow an enormous amount of wool. We have sheep, a lot of sheep in Australia. And because the world wool industry wants to know, where the sheep is grown, how the sheep's grown, how they're looked after, we in Australia can offer the kind of transparency around the supply of that material if we had the infrastructure and the skills to go from fleece to yarn to fine fabric. And we don't. We don't. Our fleece goes off and then it comes back to Australia, and woven in Italy, comes back to Australia. And in that process, we don't have like high it's not like we've got like the blockchain sitting behind the fleece that goes so that we can prove provenance all the way through. We don't have really, really durable and sophisticated systems yet. And I do think that wool is a good example where we could potentially have a supply chain that was local, some aspect, certain aspect of it that was localized, that could build skills in Australia again and also build demand again. Because one of the reasons that we don't use a lot of wool, we don't keep a lot of wool infrastructure in Australia, is we don't actually use a lot of it either. So it's a very small percentage that goes to the global demand for wool comes out of Australia. So I think that's a good one, and the reason for that wool industry emphasis comes back to what it is that the consumer demands. The consumer demands to know whether how the sheep have been looked after, how whether or not they've been mules, what processes have been undertaken in order to get from fleece to fine fabric.
Mhm. Yes, since we are talking about the traceability and the transparency, sustainable brands these days, like, we have many sustainable brands which are truly sustainable, but being overshadowed by the brands who are practicing the greenwashing. You might have come across the brands like Zara and H&M. They are marketing being like, our products are made with 100% recycled cotton, this and that. But if you get into the label or if you dive deep, you'll find the reality. But you and me are in industry and we know the facts, but the normal consumer will believe whatever they see. So how do you think the sustainable brands and the thrift brands and upcycling brands should communicate this narrative of, storytelling and everything to the consumer? Where are they lacking to promote their story, and what advice or recommendations do you have for the sustainable brands to, make this narrative stronger?
I think that you've actually picked up on it there. One of the things that I've certainly found, particularly over the last 10 years, and I think it is the result of social media, that storytelling has become really, really important. 10 years ago, it was less important. But today, the stories that brands tell that are genuine stories and really like being clear upfront, even for small brands, about who they are, authentically what brings them to that space, what they bring to the space, but then what they're able to offer to the sector more broadly. I think these are the stories that we have to get used to telling, probably about ourselves as designers and ourselves as brands, rather than that kind of outward facing, this is the brand, kind of separate from the person. The story becomes increasingly personal, and in that personal story comes the authenticity that I really believe is driving a lot of the desire to contribute, like to become part of that circular economy. If you think about how, like if you know people who go and shop secondhand, for instance, the story behind the secondhand item is often just as important as the item itself. I found this here, I paid this for it. I was so lucky. They become the ways that we connect to each other. And so if this fashion is already about connection, then I think that this is a primary. We need to become really good storytellers, much better storytellers, because trying to compete on price, we can't do. We just can't. And I don't see what the purpose of that is either. So how do we capture people's curiosity? I think it comes from our storytelling now.
Mhm. Yeah, regarding the pricing is my next question. Affordability and accessibility. So, being a sustainable and recycling brand, we can't compete with the fast fashion brands. So, we have to operate in premium to luxury category. So, how do we break through this barrier and make it a little more affordable for, like, if I've given an option between a $20 t-shirt, which is fast fashion, and a $30 t-shirt, which is sustainable, I can put that $10 extra for a sustainable, but the gap is like, $20 t-shirt for fast fashion and $100 t-shirt for the sustainable. So this is literally out
Absolutely.
of my budget. And
Yeah.
even though I want to contribute to the sustainability, but I'm in a situation that, I can't do anything. So what are the recommendations you do for these sustainable brands to get into the premium category from luxury category so that it could fill the gap between a fast fashion brand and a luxury brand. It could be the middle ground. So what can sustainable brands do to fill up this gap?
I think that that's where we're looking at the business model becomes really important. So, are you able to offer repair service, or are you able to offer return, or replace, or some kind of, like for instance, there's a young brand here in South Australia that she does beautiful knitwear. It's quite expensive, but when you go to purchase a piece of one of her collection, you automatically are registered for Aerobe, which is the resale platform. It captures the color, the size, the thing, and and so captures that at the same time as you purchase it new. This second platform captures the metadata so that if in 3 or 4 months' time you go, oh, not really wearing this anymore, then you can resell it really quickly. Now, the important thing about that is, if you've ever tried to sell something online, it's such a pain. You have to photograph it, you have to write about it, all of that stuff. So that platform, for instance, does away with that barrier. And it also offers you a price to say, you're paying this much today. In 6 months' time, this is how much you can get for it. So I think that's also really important. So if I pay $100 for the dress today, and then in 6 months' time I don't want to wear it anymore, but I know I can get $50 back for it, I'll look after it so that in 6 months I can get another $50 back. And that's what I mean, that these kinds of really, really experimenting with different business models and finding the ones that work for us as sustainable brands, as smaller brands trying to scale in a way that we can do. I think that's going to be really important for us.
Okay. So moving forward, since we are talking about my research is purely based on denim,
Yeah.
all the techniques which I have discussed in my paper is based on a denim fabric. So since we are talking about denim, so cotton is the base raw material. Here and there you will see the mix of 1% of 2% of mix in the manufacturing. But now, since we have seen the shift from the natural leather to plant-based leather because of so and so issues. So, do you think there might be a shift from natural cotton to some other cotton? Because I have seen um, the reports and the facts that is talking about the countries like China, who is cultivating the massive amount of cotton, is using the harmful pesticides and fertilizers to
Yeah.
hybridize, and
Yeah.
which is harmful for
Yeah.
the microbial life in the land. So these fertilizers are making the land lifeless, which is more harmful because being of designers, we only think fabric as a raw material, but we have to think fabric is a finished product for someone else. So particularly
That's
from
right.
you, people like you, because you work on the knitwear. So how do you think that the cotton, is there any chance that if there is any similar sustainable product which could replace cotton?
I think there are two things there. So when I was in at the Berlin fashion talks, they were talking about the end of cotton in 10 years. All of the things that you've described become so problematic globally that they were predicting at the very highest levels that the global cotton industry is not going to proceed. Now, I don't know. That's what they were saying. So I just take that as a fact from them. The other thing that I know for certain is that denim is one of denim, and particularly denim jeans, are one of the hardest items to resell. So whereas if I find a shirt in a secondhand shop, it'll fit me or won't fit me. Like a shirt is a reasonably unproblematic piece of clothing, but jeans are very difficult to fit. And it's a bit like uniform pants, they either they fit you or they don't. And so jeans are a really big waste item in secondhand. I think that if there was again a space where you really wanted to concentrate on, say, for instance, repurposing existing fibers, existing fabrics back to fiber, then denim's the one to do it. Because, as you say, all of the problems they've the problems are already there. You're not creating more problems, but you are then using a product that is a durable product,
Yeah.
and that can be, yeah, remade. It can be. I'm just trying to think somewhere. Where have I seen it? Uh, so there are a couple of places in Hong Kong that, where they are, uh, recycling fabrics back to fleece and then back into yarn.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably a place for denim, because it's a durable, but it's a durable fabric, but it's a material that can be recycled. So I don't know what would replace it, but I can certainly see how you could recycle it.
Okay. So, do you think recycling is a better option for denim than upcycling?
Upcycling is such a fabulous option if you've got skills. If you
Hmm.
don't have skills, it's like repair, repair.
Yeah.
Also, you need skills, yeah. You need to know how to do this stuff. And it's fine. For you and me, it's fine. I can upcycle anything. But if I go and talk to the person next door, they don't own a sewing needle, so, and wouldn't know what to do. So
Exactly. So
it's that, yeah,
that's where I get the lack of education. Most
absolutely.
of the people I talk about, they know about recycling, but very few know what is upcycling. They know what
Yeah.
is it, but they don't know what is it at the same time. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
why do you think this issue is there? Like a normal consumer have no idea how much water a denim pair of jeans take in manufacturing. When I say that, it take like thousands of
I
liters
don't I
to,
don't yeah. I just don't think we've thought about it, Like fast fashion really did make us quite stupid in
yeah,
so
yeah.
many ways.
So,
That if I think about,
so that's my question is education is important. So at what
yeah,
stage? Like because only fashion students know about what is the true cost of fashion. So do you
yeah.
think there should be a changes in education and where the institutes research universities play? Do you think there should be more and more space for, because we have a lot of funding in science, AI, technology, but we have very limited universities who fund to research about this sustainable fashion. So, at what stage do you think that education about the sustainability should start? If you ask my opinion, it should start from the high school, where the students should be taken for the industry visits, have to talk about, recycling, upcycling, and the true sides of this thing. So, what do you think an education role in consumer awareness, and at what stage do you believe it should start?
So I think it starts younger than that. Actually think it starts like at preschool,
Okay.
because you can get kids really interested in textiles really early on. And at the moment, I'm preparing an online program for Children's University, which is really is for children to learn different skills, because it's if you can teach kids to be interested in textiles, when they're 6, and you can teach them some simple skills. And then as they get older, they go and do those exactly as you're describing. They go as part of their school trips to go and see recycling and upcycling, and become connected with them in some way. And you just keep telling that story over and over, as we have done with waste. There was a time 15 years ago where people threw everything in the bin, and now we take, we put the bottles here and the cardboard here and the plastic here. And that started with kids really, really young. And then I think the role that the universities play has to do not just with the materials, and fashion itself, but also with the communication and promotion of those opportunities, at all levels. That to ensure that whatever is coming out of the research centres becomes common knowledge again, because once it was common knowledge, and it isn't anymore. And I say, that I in presentations I've got a picture of a little knitting machine that was put out by Mattel. It's a little Barbie knitting machine from the 1980s. And we went from making clothes for Barbie on this little machine to buying clothes for Barbie to becoming Barbie. And in that period of 20 years, we lost all the skills that were required to make things again. And I do think it starts really, really early.
Mm. So I recommend if in order to know better, I think, India is a house for the handloom and handloom knitwear, where you could see the traditional families, like, generations by generations,
That's
they are
right.
continuing this work. So, my next question is that, how do we break the cultural taboo? Because, since we are talking about second-hand business model, people have a willingness to buy a second-hand car, second-hand house, but, they think twice to buy something second-hand apparel.
Mm,
So in
mm.
countries, particularly in countries like India, China, and this Asian countries, buying something secondhand is considered as like, and no, we don't. So there is this cultural barrier. But if you see in the Western society, they are being like, getting the acceptability window. If you see the reports from the trade up, you'll see the Generation Z is more open towards second-hand apparel market. So, is there a same taboo or stereotype in Australia, or like what if there? What is the thing that we have to focus on making second-hand shopping as a new normal?
I think that it's interesting the point that you just made before about having those unbroken lines of traditional weaving and traditional looms and families and the like. That say for instance, if your grandmother gave you a piece that had been woven by your grandmother, you would
Hmm.
never consider it secondhand. You would be
Exactly.
you would
Yeah.
cherish it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would cherish it because you've got that unbroken line. And we broke the lines in Australia. We broke the lines between tradition and what we have today. And so I think what Gen Z is offering is a way of rethinking about not so much about those traditional lines, but rethinking about the value of those lines. And so I think that the more we can encourage them, the more we can encourage young people to really to see this, to be social about it, to be open about the joy that it brings them. If you've ever talked to an 18-year-old about what they've found in the secondhand shop, they're so excited. And they share it with their friends. And I think that's part of that educational process. I find it's harder for people my age, even though I always shopped at secondhand from when I was a little girl. But then I was part of, I'm one of 9 children. I was used to the idea of clothes being handed down, of being made and then worn over and over again through different people. So it's I do it again, it's an educational thing, but I think the more we can encourage it and look at how we promote it as a joyful activity. I think we have to get out of our heads that we talk to people about, you know, consumption and like all of the problems of it because nobody wants to. It's like trying to stop people from smoking or stop them from drinking by saying you're going to die. It's like no one's going to stop for that reason.
So, um, my last question is that, how do you see the growing business model of thrifting and upcycling? There are brands which has growing based on, subscription model, customization model. The best example is Levi's Tailor Shop. Uh,
Yeah,
they have started the customization services that you could
yeah,
take your Levi's jeans or jacket and get it customized
yeah.
according to your thing. So this is the very interesting thing. But the challenge here is that Levi's Tailor Shop only accept the Levi's products. If you take them a diesel jeans and ask, hey, could you do it? Sorry, this is not our brand and we don't touch it. So, but my idea is that there should be a full-time brands where uh, which works on upcycling, doesn't matter whichever brand the product come from. The this
Mm,
particular brand should be able to rebrand the product. Doesn't matter it is a Levi's or it is Jack and
mm,
Jones,
mm.
wherever.
Yeah,
Customize it according to the customer's needs and
yeah,
to give it, sell it back to the consumer, the customer, or like, it should be an option where the customer can dispose it, like this is my old pair of jeans and give me a token
yeah.
out of this, and so that I can use the token to purchase something else from the same brand, which is upcycled. So do you think there is a potential of growth of such business models moving forward?
I think there are outside of like the iconic brands. I think it's harder for the iconic brands because there's so much kind of sunk cost in the brand in the infrastructure. But I can certainly see, like a collaboration of local brands who come together, and their business model actually encourages that kind of personalization and customization across different brands. I think it's a beautiful, again, that's the joyful part of it, right? That
Yeah,
I could buy from you today a pair of jeans, or I could buy a pair of jeans in the secondhand shop and then take them to you, and you do some personalization, customization. I can do some experimentation with it as well, and together we recreate something. I think these kinds of models are so exciting, and 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 I kind of, I always think to myself, fast fashion is only 20 years,
yeah,
right? In all of the years of fashion, it's only 20 years. So if we can get past it, and if we can actually offer really innovative models that bring the joy back to people and really bring the joy back to the globe around, being sustainable, then we can just hopefully just stop this thing in its own tracks just because consumer no longer wants it.
yeah.
That's my hope for the future.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your time. So I
Yeah.
may have like, skip some questions because you all have already answered that questions in your previous answers. So thank you very much for your time. And do you have any suggestions, recommendations before we close the recording?
I was really interested to see. So there's a young designer here in Australia, Dempstar. They have taken the scraps from the shop floor from
Mhm.
another designer. So this is an example of the kind of collaboration. So the other designer, they have the scraps at the end of their manufacturing process. They've taken those, taken them to Hong Kong, had them remade into mixed, pull them apart, mixed them with cotton in this instance, and then brought them back to Australia as a new yarn. And then Demstar have invested in some smart technology to now knit this new yarn. That kind of collaboration, I just think, is so exciting, and offers a glimpse into what a future can look like that is sustainable, joyful, includes upcycling at all aspects.
Of course, I totally agree. So
Thank you
thank,
so much. It's
thank you
been a
very much
delight.
for your time.
Good night.
And
Take care.
yeah, sure, let me stop the recording.